Welcome back, crewmates. With the super pre-release around the corner, I've been asked to talk about our starter deck options for choosing from the event. So, go ahead and strong right that sub button and the bell thingy so that you're always ready for our newest videos. So with the pre-release coming up, the format is you buy a starter deck at the tournament, and that will be what you are playing with for the event. So, we're going to take a little bit of time and go through the starter decks and see what's up and where they place with each other. We got 4 decks to choose from: Luffy, Crocodile, Kid, and Kaido. And we're going to go ahead and jump into a brief rundown, starting with Luffy. Now, this leader has activate main once per turn. Go ahead and give this leader or one of your characters a rested Dawn. So, if you can think about it, you would have technically 11 Dawn, max if you have all, but you always have like 1 extra Dawn to work with per turn as you go through your turns. Now, unfortunately for Luffy here, I think that the Straw Hat Red deck is the weakest of the 4 starter decks to choose from. Thankfully, when moving into the main bulk of the deck, half of these cards are actually vanillas, and all of the starter decks have them. So we get to just kind of run right through them. So we have the Karo 3K, we have the 1-drop blocker, all of them have the 1-drop blocker. Going into the first effect is the 1-drop Nami with 1000k, and she actually has the same effect as the Luffy leader. So once per turn, give one leader or one of your characters 1 rested Dawn. So if she's out, she gives you an additional Dawn to kind of play around with every single turn. So actually opening up Nami lets you do some very nice things and control your Dawn very well. It lets you pay for your Dawn effects for free pretty much, and while you're progressing your game state into the board. Unfortunately, coming up next is Usopp, which is kind of infamous for me at least, because every time I was playing with this starter deck, I did not want to see Usopp. And the reason is, he is a 2-drop 2k who is the trigger for the deck, so if you get him off damage, you can play him for free. But being 2k, you have to invest 3 Dawn into him for him to be 5k to swing at leader. And even with using effects to cheat Dawn under him, you'd rather just use those effects on other cards to make them bigger. And his effect is irrelevant too, because you see his effect is Dawn ×2 when attacking. Your opponent cannot activate blocker on characters with a power of 5,000 or more during this battle. Now what's strange about this card is it takes 2 Dawn to activate it, but then only goes up to 4k if he has 2 Dawn. I think this is almost like a misprint. Whenever I see this card, I'm like, why isn't he 3k? Because then he'd be a 5k when you activate his effect. Which makes sense. Usually the Dawn balances out his attack stat, but for this it's not. I just don't like this card, and unfortunately he's a 4-of in the starter deck. Sanji's actually on the other spectrum. He is your main rusher in the deck, and he is just solidly good. 2-drop 4k. Dawn ×2, his character gains rush, so he can attack the turn he split. And, with your leader, and if you have Nami out, you play her first turn, right? That means, for free technically, he's a rush with 6k. So you pay 2, get him out, you use Luffy, give him 1, you use Nami, give him 2, he becomes 6k with the 2 Dawn under him, his ability is now active, and he swings for 6. So it's very nice that he actually has 4 in the deck. Brook is your 2000 guard, but the starter deck only comes with 2 of them. So you only have 2 2000 guards in this deck, which makes your defensive very low. And on play, give one of your characters to rested Dawn, or your leader. But you'd really rather just keep him in your hand, especially since you only have 2 of them. Playing him is kind of detrimental. You have 4 copies of this Jinbei. He is 3-drop 5k with a Dawn under him when attacking. You can give any of your guys, including your leader, 1000 power. He's okay. Not bad. Especially because you can give him, a Dawn for free with your leader. And then we have the first super rare, which is Zoro here. With a Dawn under him, he gains 1000. But that is not during your turn. So when you use his ability, he will stay a 6k during the opponent's turn, because the Dawn doesn't leave until your next turn. So he's a little harder to run over if you use his ability. So it's not awful. He's only 3-drop. Pretty fair. And then the best card, the best character in the deck, because the best card's probably Jet Pistol, but the best character in the deck is the other super rare, which is Monkey D. Luffy, 5-drop 6k, and he has Rush just base. And then his Dawn ability is if he has 2 down under when attacking, your opponent can't block, period. Doesn't matter how big they are anyway. It's a fantastic ability. And if you have your leader, gives him 1. And then if you have Nami out, gives him 2. So if you have Nami prepared already, you pay 5, you play him out, you use Nami, use Luffy, make him an 8k, that has Rush, and they can't block him. And it's a fantastic card. Unfortunately, your best card in your deck is only a 2-0. I mean, but that's the case with a lot of cards, but in these starter decks at least. But the power level of this deck is a little low. Moving into the event cards. Guard Point is actually your only defensive event in this starter deck, and you only get 2 of it. I don't know why. You should have at least gotten 4 of this card. For 1, you get plus 3k, so it's pretty solid, especially considering that most 1Ks, most 1-drop events are 2k, and then the 2-drop events are 4k, so it's a nice middle ground. But you only get 2 of it. Then you have 2 Diable Jambe. This card's pretty bad. So, once per turn, choose your leader or one of your characters with the Straw Hat Crew trait. During this turn, your opponent cannot block. So it gives it the ability of the Big Luffy. And then on trigger, KO an opponent's character with a cost 3 or less. That's a blocker. Like 5% of the time. Wait, first of all, there's only 2 in the deck. So it's only going to be a very small percentage that you actually hit the trigger. And then when you hit the trigger, there's another percentage where you'd even be able to activate it. So it pretty much just goes to your hand. But it lets you make it so one of your guys can't block. So the only scenario that this card was good in is if you're going for game and they have literally 0 life. You just slap all your Dawn on one guy, make it so they can't block if they have blockers out, and you go for game. But that's such a small window of opportunity that for the rest of the game, this card is just sitting in your hand dead. Unfortunately, there's really no purpose for it. And then pretty much the best card in the deck, which is Gum Gum Jet Pistol. Pay 4, just KO any of your opponent's characters with 6,000 power or less, and then the trigger is just activate the card. It's a very, very good card, but you only get 2 of it. So the best cards in your deck are limited, unfortunately. And then you actually have a stage, which is the Sunny, but the Sunny isn't great, unfortunately. Pay 2, it stays on the board, and then every turn you can give one of your leaders or your characters 1,000. It's not a very big boost, and most of the time you just don't want to play the card, unfortunately. That's it for the red deck. But moving on to the blue deck, which is the Crocodile deck. I would pretty much safely say that the Crocodile deck, in my opinion, is the 3rd best deck, because the last 2 are pretty much in like competition between each other, for me at least. I think both of them are good. And Crocodile is a Control ES deck, because his effect is as follows. Once per turn, Dawn -4, you can just return a character with a cost 5 or less to the owner's hand. So there is an event, I'll just shoot over to it, called Sabu's, and it says return a cost 7 or less to the owner's hand for 4. So your leader is actually just a permanent copy of Sabu's, pretty much, that you are allowed to just activate, which is nice for setting your opponent back. My problem with this leader is when you're fighting against, especially purple, the Kaido deck, they have a lot of on-play effects, and you definitely don't want to bounce characters with on-play effects because they get more value out of them. So specifically the purple matchup, this effect is really, really not great. You're pretty much going to only want to use it for like blockers, and then one of their blockers actually has an on-play effect. So moving out of that little scenario, we're going into the 4 1-drop blockers that all of the starter decks have. The 1-drop 3k vanilla, the 2-drop 4k vanilla. Then we have our trigger unit, which is Kuma, and he has 3,000 power, can play him off damage if you get him. And on play, look at 3 cards from the top of your deck and return them to the top or bottom in any order. So it's a nice little check top, and rearrange them, maybe get some cards you were hoping for later, or if you don't like any of them, like if they're 3 vanillas, right, you just pop them on the bottom. Fine by me. Now this deck actually has 2 separate trigger cards. So we have Kuma and Boa, and Boa is a blocker that plays from damage. So she's fantastic and a very nice surprise, because if she's hit, she's like a free negate attack. But she does cost 3 if you hard draw her, and she only has 1,000 power. But, I mean, blocker's a blocker, right? I think she's pretty good. The 3k, 5k vanilla. Sensumaru is a very strong card. Now, Sentomaru is the 3-drop 4K. Dawn under him, activate, pay 2, so you have to put a Dawn under him and then tap 2. Then you're allowed to just play a Pacifisto that costs 4 less from your deck, and then shuffle your deck. That's just complete plus. That's a free advantage, a free value out of your deck. And the Pacifisto that you get to play is this 4-drop 6K vanilla. So it's just, you know, pay 3, get a free card. And it is a straight plus because it's from deck. So you can start building an army. This is probably one of the cards you want to try and see in your opening hand, but then again, you know, it's only playing 2 of it. So the odds of you actually opening it are small, but I don't see a reason why you wouldn't try a mulligan for him. No, in my opinion, there is something to think about with Sentomaru. Now, do you play him when you have 3, like if you open him, right? As soon as you get to 3 or 4, you know, if you're going first or second, do you play him immediately and set him up for the next turn? Or do you wait until you have 6 and then play him for 3 and then pay the 3 to immediately get the Pacifist out? I guess that's just player preference. I haven't really decided which I like better. I suppose the only thing I would think about in that scenario is if I'm fighting against, say, purple, I wouldn't play him early because of, you know, pop effects. Like Who's Who and King, that could just blow him up while he's active. Because normally if the card's active, it's a little stickier to the board, harder to get rid of. So that's something to keep in mind. 2 copies of Mihawk Boy here. He is your 2000 counter. And he has a fantastic on-field effect too, which is when attacking, if there's his on-arm, draw 2, ditch 1, so you can, you know, try and get to your Sentomaru faster. A little consistency never hurt anybody. And he's 4-drop 5K. I think, yeah, this deck actually, if that only has the 2000 guard in this deck also, but this deck has a few more defensive events. It also has more blockers, so it makes up for that, where the red deck only had the 4 choppers, and then the 2 brooks, and then the 2 guard point. Moria is a really good card. 4-drop 5K. On play, add 1 7 Warlords or Thriller Barks character with a cost 4 or less, other than himself, from your trash to your hand. So you get to recycle your 2000k guard. You can recycle your 1-drop blockers, which is nice. That's usually what, you know, I would do with the card in the starter deck. So for 5, you can play Moria for 4 and then get a blocker out. Or you can just replace him with a 2k guard in hand and still get a 5k attacker. Then we have the Pacifista down here, we already talked about. We have Blackbeard, the big cherry pie boy himself. On play, he bounces a card, so return a character cost 3 or less to the owner's hand. He's a 4-drop 4k. He's alright. You know, you have to invest in him to attack because it's only 4k. You have your big blocker in this deck, which is the Crocodile himself, 5-drop 6k. I do like 6k stat blockers, because when you block with them, like say they swing for leader, you get to block with them and you're already 1000 up, so you can guard the blocker easier and then he'll live and then you can reset him. I like doing that with my 6k blockers. And then he has a defensive effect. If there's a Dawn under him when blocking, you get to return a character of cost 2 or less to the bottom of the owner's deck. So if your opponent has like some little guys out, like I don't know, like Anami or Perona, or even some little blockers, you can actually just clean those up for free when he blocks. That's nice. In experience, it doesn't actually come up that often, but if they, you know, if you see them and they haven't used their blockers or anything, good, pop a Dawn under them and it's just free value. And the last guy is the big guy of the deck, which is the Dofi. So Don Quixote do Flamingo, 7-drop 7k, he's a big boy. On play, return a cost 7 or less to the owner's hand. I do wish that it wasn't a bounce. I do wish it was like a straight removal, like put it back in the deck, put it in trash, something, but it is a bounce, so they'll get it back. But he's a big body, and you do want big bodies, they're good. Love Beam is probably one of the best events in Blue, period. So 2 costs give you 4000 power, but if you have 3 or less cards in your hand when you play it, you get to draw a card. That is very valuable. So you only have 2 of these in the deck because of that. And then your big one is this It is a counter. So return a character that costs 3 or less to the owner's hand, and then the trigger is do that effect. I'm not a super big fan of it, but if in the starter deck battle it's a little different. So say, you know, there are 3 cost guys that your opponent wants to attack with, and if they invest Dawn into it, you can just play this bounce to their hand. That's Dawn. That's wasted Dawn. It's gonna go back rested. They're not gonna be able to use it. And you know, if they play that guy again, he can't attack unless he has rush. But I mean, I wouldn't play this on a rush card anyway, probably. And then we have 4 copies of Sables, which is an event you play on your turn, which is bounce a cost 7 or less to the owner's hand. So it's trying to set them back a bit. But, you know, depending on the card, you might not get value out of bouncing it. In fact, not only might you not get value, you might actually give your opponent value. So you really have to be careful what you bounce. And that takes care of the blue deck. Next, we have the Kaido deck. So Kaido and Kid, which is the 4th deck, I think are kind of neck and neck for me. I really like the purple deck because there's a lot of removal and like draw power in the deck. And then the Kid deck just has a really, really strong leader that you always have, so it's just like consistent in that regard. But this Kaido says once per turn, Dawn -7. That's a big investment. Trash one of your opponent's life. Just goes to the graveyard, it's gone. You gotta be careful with this. So while I was playing this, if you play this effect too early, you will kill yourself. So by kill yourself, I mean you'll play this and be like, yeah, I got a free damage, but then you gotta ramp back up, and you're not gonna be able to play cards. So if you play it too early, and then your Dawn's too low and your opponent has that 10 Dawn, they're going to start playing big guys or even just multiple small guys, and you're going to be so far behind that they could just molly rush you, and you're done. So pretty much this was like a once per game effect for me, where I'd wait until the final turn really, and then when they had 1 life and I was comfortable to go for game, I'd use it, get rid of the last life, and just swing, and then they have to guard everything, right? That's how I used it. Then we got the 1-drop 3k, the 2-drop 4k, and then the purple deck does not have a 1-drop blocker, it has a 2-drop blocker. I assume that's still like because it's a whole ramp deck, so even the blocker needs to be bigger, something like that. But yeah, she is the vanilla blocker, Black Maria, 2-drop 2k. And then Sasaki is part of the draw engine. So 3-drop 4k, call him Triceracopter. So you Dawn -1, which is take a Dawn, put it back in the Dawn deck. That's the theme of purple. You ramp up, destroy your own Dawn, ramp it back. You get to just draw card. So he replaces himself, and he has counter, so it's good. And then we have 2 copies of Jack. So he's ramped. When you play him, you discard a card, and then you ramp 1. Not bad. It is a minus, but he's 4k. Who's Who? Probably one of the best cards, period, in the deck. He is your trigger. And when he's played, you Dawn -1 to KO any of your opponent's characters cost 3 or less. Doesn't matter if they're active, rested, whatever. Fantastic trigger card. I mean, even, you know, when you're not playing the starter deck, you play this card. That's how good this card is. The 3-drop 5k X-Drake. The ulti, which you actually have 4 copies of. So you have 4 copies of your 2k guard, 2000 guard, which that's what ulti is. But you might actually want to play her also. Because on play Dawn -1, you can play a page 1 card with a cost 4 or less from your hand. And the page 1 is your 4-drop 6k vanilla. So, by paying only 4 for the ulti, and then using the 4 you paid, you know, you send 1 back. That's the most efficient way to do it. So for 4 costs, you actually get a 5k and a 6k. So she is a 2k guard that you might actually want to play if you have the page 1. Queen, best blocker, period. Hashtag Zuma 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 Zuma, but 6k blocker, so you know I like that 6k stat line. He actually has guard too, which a lot of 6k blockers don't have guard, but Queen does. And then Dawn -1, draw 2 cards and discard 1. So he is a blocker that is a filter that is a plus on play. It doesn't just break you even, that's a straight plus. Queen's fantastic. Then we move into King, who's a big boy. 6-drop 7k. On play, Dawn -1, KO an opponent's character with cost 4 or less. So he kills medium guys. And then you have the big boss Kaido himself. They call me Kaido. So 9-drop 10k baseline. Dawn -5, KO any character with 6 or less. Then he gains rush. So he's swinging. I love this card. I mean, that's why I built the deck around it afterwards, but he's a very strong card. Kills very large creatures, and then he's big enough to run over other large creatures. You have 4 copies of Bolo Breath in this deck, which is one of the strongest 1-cost events, period. And at Dawn -1 just gives you 4k. So you only have to pay 1 and you gain 4k, and there's 4 of them. So this is a very tanky deck, actually. Because you have 4 Bolo Breath, and then you have 4 of your 2k cards. All-Star Calamities is eh. I mean, you pay 4, you draw a card, you ramp 1, and then the trigger does the same. It's okay. Then Bareki Obama is a ramp card where you pay 6, KO a 6 cost or less, then ramp 1. So it's kind of like a Jet Pistol in a sense. It just costs a bit more, but it ramps you 1. So if you pay it while you still have Dawn, it technically only costs 5 and not 6. You know, you can look at it that way. And then 4 copies of the best stage, which is Onigashima. Activate main, rest the stage, ramp 1 and rest it. It's the best stage card. You always want to try and mulligan for this card because it just makes all your Dawn minus effects pretty much free. And when you're getting those effects off for free, like draw 1, pop 1, draw 2, ditch 1, you know, play extra guy from hand, and when they're free because of your stage, you're in a good position. Then we move on to the Kid Boy, Eustace Captain Kid. So he has a very strong effect, where once per turn, at the cost of 3, discard a card from your hand and stand him. So he can get 2 attacks. Now, you have to be, this is kind of like Kaido, where I want to say, be careful when you use this effect. Because if you use it all the time, like every turn, you're going to lose. Why are you going to lose? Because this is a minus every turn. You have to discard a card to activate this. If you're pitching a card every turn, you're going to slowly run out of cards, you're not going to be able to guard, and you're going to die. It's just how it is. So you want to pick and choose your turns when you use this. And if you think about it, you know, in the most basic Dawn way, you know, use the big brain. You have 10 Dawn, you know, in your final amount. So you can put 7 under him, make him a 12k, you still have 3 up. So you can swing twice for 12 with this card. So he's a very powerful finisher that you always have access to because he is your leader. And there is nothing they can do about your leader. It will always be there, it will always be able to attack. So blockers are your worst enemy in this deck. So blue, I would say, actually has the most defensive potential against this because blue runs, what, 10 blockers, I think? And you want a blocker against Kid, it's the best way to block the big attacks. But if you're at 1 or 0 and you don't have blockers when this is swinging, you're in trouble. So always be wary that this guy is threatening 2 12k attacks every turn if you're low health. Then we have the 1-drop 3k vanilla. They play the 4, you know, the 1-drop blocker guy, which is Coupon. The starter deck comes with 4 Julia Bonnie. It's a very good card. She activate main 1, you know, rest her, check top 5 for any supernova added to your hand. It's a very good filter card for a starter deck, that's for sure. The green deck comes with 4 Apu, who is your 2000k blocker. He does have an on-play effect, almost irrelevant. Put a Dawn under him when attacking, rest an opponent's Dawn card. He is 3000, so with 1 Dawn under him, he's only 4k. So you will have to put 2 under him to make him hit that 5k. Just saying. He's better off in hand. They have the 2-drop 4k. Uroge is a 2-drop 3k with a Dawn under him. If you have 3 or more characters, he gains 2000 power. It does count himself. So if you have a board with a Dawn under him, he's actually a 6k 2-drop. Not bad. It's okay. Your trigger is Killer Boy. On play, KO an opponent's resting character with cost 3 or less. He's like a specific Kusu. He doesn't neg you a Dawn, and in return he can only pop rested, and then trigger you get to play him for free. He does have guard though, which Kusu doesn't. You have your 3-drop 5k vanilla. You have 4 copies of this X-Drake, who's pretty good, with a Dawn under him during your turn while this character is rested, so after he attacks. Your leader and all characters with Marines or Supernova gain 1000. So by putting a Dawn under him and giving him 1000, when he attacks, he gives everyone else 1000. So he's kind of like the Zora leader, where by investing in him, you invest in everybody. So he's pretty solid. And they gave you 4 of it. So it's good. Okay, 4-drop 6k was Kobe. The first super rare, which is Trafalgar Law, 5k, 5-drop 6k. On play, switch one of your rested characters with Supernova or Heart Pirates and cost 5 or less to active. So it lets you do a cheeky thing where, you know, you swing with somebody, you play him, you get to stand him and swing again. It's not terrible. Basil Hawkins actually is a guy who can restand himself. So Dawn times 1 under him once per turn during your turn. After this character battles with an opponent's character, you get to turn him to active. So the Dawn under him, he's actually a 7k, which is pretty big. And if your opponent blocks him, that counts as battling a character, so he stands. So there's no point to block him. It doesn't do anything. And you can actually go for their creatures effectively. So if they have rested guys you want to clear, swing in, stand, swing in, you can go for another guy or you can go for face. Hawkins is actually a very good card. And then the big bad kid himself, the other super rare, he is 7-drop 7k, who is a blocker. But he is a very unique blocker because with a Dawn under him during the end of the turn, you can switch him to active. So he is a blocker that can attack and still be up to guard. He is a fantastic blocker. And he's not really going anywhere because he's pretty big. I think Sables and Dopey can bounce him to hand, but that's hand. The next turn you can play him again does cost you a lot, but that's worth it in my opinion because he's so good. And then we have the Scalpel. It's a 1-drop defensive card that gives you 2k, and then you can switch one of your rested Dawn to active. So if you have multiple Scalpels in hand, you can play them all with just one Dawn. It's not great, but it's defense. But you also actually have 4 copies of a 2-cost 4k, which actually makes this deck pretty tanky in itself because you also have 4 copies of the 2k guard guy. And it's, it has the same effect as Scalpel, so one of your cards is active. So you could technically leave 2 up, and then, both of your events will leave 1 up, so you'd still be able to play the other one. So it's pretty good. It helps you not clog on them. And then 2 copies of Straw Sword. Lets you rest any opponent's character. So lets you rest big blockers. Was what I normally use for this, or even little blockers. Because, like I said, your leader's worst enemy is just little blockers, because they can stop your 12k attack. So you can use this to stop those little blockers and just go in for face, or if they have a guy that they're trying to set up, say like Centauro in blue, and they, keep him inactive so he's protected, you can use Straw Sword, tap him, and then swing it on. And then its trigger's really weird. Play a Supernova type card with 2 or less in your hand that never comes up. So that go ahead and takes care of the little review we have for the 4 starter decks. So like I said, in my opinion, I believe the Green Kid deck and the Purple Kaido deck are my 2 top decks. Pretty much your player preference on which one you want to play in that regard. And then the 3rd place, I'd probably go with the Crocodile. And then unfortunately 4th place definitely goes to Luffy in the gang. I think the starter deck is pretty subpar for the red in this little stream of things, unfortunately. But I think that about does it. I hope you enjoyed the little discussion with the pre-release coming up. I hope you guys have a great time. And let me know what you'd like to see from us in the future. And go ahead and let me know what your favorite starter deck in general is, not just, power-wise, but just the theme. And we'll see you next time, YouTube.